10:01, so I think we might start if that's okay. We can keep letting people come in. Welcome, everyone. Nancy Quigg here, your 2023 GSAR president. It's especially important that you sign in the chat before we get going and sign out after the presentation so you get credit for today's class. If you attend all 4 Raising the Bars or 3 Raising the Bars and Community Day scheduled for May 5th, you will be eligible to receive 20% discount on your 2024 local GSAR dues. The Zoom setup today will be able to, I'm changing this right now. What's happening is if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Danielle will see you and she will unmute you for that question. Or if you prefer, you can still put your question in the chat and Danielle will read the question and Mary will be able to answer. I would like to thank this morning's sponsor of our second Raising the Bar, which is Salve Bank. Thank you very much. I would like to take a second to recognize and thank our 2023 sponsors. Our platinum sponsors are Community Bank, Countryside Credit Union, Empower Federal Credit Union, Lang Law Office, and Salve Bank. Our gold sponsors are AmeriQ Credit Union, Fulton Savings Bank, Geddes Federal Savings Bank, Hinman, Howard, and Cattell LLP, M&T Bank, Paragon Home Loans, and Tompkins Community Bank. And our silver sponsors are the Law Office of Robert Carter, New York State Association of Realtors, Prime Lending, and State Farm Insurance. Our speaker today, this morning, is Mary Peyton. Mary has been in the real estate industry for over 20 years. She became a manager broker in 2008 and loves helping agents develop and learn more about the industry while keeping it fun and interesting. In 2015, she became New York State real estate instructor, and we are lucky today to have her speak to our membership. Good morning, Miss Peyton.
Good morning.
Great to have you here.
Oh, I'm very excited to be here. Happy Fair Housing Month, everybody. All right, so what we're going to do today is so a few things about me. I am the woman who over-prepares for everything. And I have a 70-page handout for you guys so what I'm going to go over today, you will receive so that anything we talk about, you will have after the presentation. So no worries there, because there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of great stuff that you guys can utilize. And there is also included today a birthday present in here for Mary Rouse. And I'd like to thank Mary Rouse because she is the reason that I'm here. Mary and I work in the same company, and this was her suggestion. So I will give you a heads up when we get to her birthday present. Also, I'd like us to be very interactive. So that's why we're having questions. When you guys, if you have questions, put them in the chat, raise your hand. And we'd really like you to be involved in the presentation. All right. So what we're going to talk about, you guys, is a lot of different aspects. And my first thing for you, which is so important, is just to remind you that when you go to continuing ed classes, you're going to hear a lot of different information, perspectives, but your broker is your partner. And before you take any action, before you do anything with a client when you're out in the world, you want to make sure that you and your broker are talking it over, because your broker has vicarious liability, which means that if an issue arises, they're going to be the one that the liability is going to fall on. So if I say something, I just always want to make sure that you guys are aware that you want to show the papers to your broker, say, this is what I'm going to do, this is why, and have them say yes or no, because it's really their job to agree or disagree with what we're going to talk about today. So I hope that's okay with everyone. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we are going to talk about is, you guys are going to receive this. We're not going to talk a lot about the first part, but it is and I apologize, you guys, because this came a little bit funky, but it's a summary of the important fair housing laws. And two things that I just want you guys to be aware of is that there are large time spans between things changing in fair housing. And there are also, it seems as if the big changes came during times of conflict in the United States history. So it's just something to know. And let me figure out how in the world I'm going to change my thing. Hang on. My screen's a little, trying to make it big so you guys can, oh, got it. So this just goes through for you all of the, hold on, let me make sure. I'm a little screen mouse happy. So it's going to go through for you all of the history of fair housing. This one is really important though, because this one will help you figure out, it's from GSAR, it's a guide to discrimination in the sale and rental of real property. So it's really important that you guys read through this, that you know it, that you be aware. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of is that we've had 2 additions to the New York State protected classes. Now let's start with the federal protected classes. You guys are all aware what our federal protected classes are? Correct? Okay. Does anyone know what our 2 new protected classes are in New York State? This is really, really important for us to know. So one would be victims of domestic violence. And there used to be that there was no protection for them, but now they are a protected class. And another, and this would become really important if you're representing any kind of a landlord, or if you yourself are the landlord, is anyone with an arrest record. If they have had, if it's been a sealed record, if it's a youthful offender status, if it has been resolved in their favor, none of that, we can't even ask questions about that. So you want to be really cautious with both of those things. And you want to be really cautious with any, I cannot tell you guys the level of caution. The rental market scares me right now as far as being involved with it. I manage 4 offices, and you have to know that, I want to see, have you guys all seen Long Island Divided and what happened through Long Island Divided? Okay, if you haven't, I beg you to watch it, because through Long Island Divided, you will see that as a society, we turned a very big corner. And the corner that we turned was the corner of recognizing that we have both implicit and explicit bias. So our explicit bias, does anybody know what our explicit bias would be? See, I like you guys all unmuted because I like you to be able to, I see you, Nancy. I know she's like, I can't talk, I'm muted. All right, so our explicit bias really would be something, like if you watched Long Island Divided, it would be something from there where there was one of the agents saying, I don't really want to steer, like steering. That would be explicit bias because he's openly showing that he is discriminating. And an implicit bias would be where it's something we're completely unaware of, which really as a society, we are all struggling with hard because we have implicit biases that we're completely unaware of. I have them myself. So that's where the work is, and that's what we're all struggling with. And it started, unfortunately, with the real estate community, and as we've seen, it's grown, so it's in a lot of different industries now. But we were the first industry to have the light shown on us, which is unfortunate because I don't know if you guys were paying attention at that time, but all of the lawmakers were saying, those darn realtors, we're not going to let them get away with this. We're going to make them pay, and we're going to make sure. So we really were portrayed in not the best light at all. And our industry is very much under the microscope for that. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of, because for many, many, many years, we have been skating in a way that honestly upset me deeply. Things like the DOS didn't seem to me to take action against, agents and brokers who were misbehaving. They'd kind of more slap them on the hand. And you know how human beings are. So they go from not really taking action to they swing right over to the, okay, now we're going to go off the deep end and we're going to pull licenses. So hopefully we're going to get back to this little center of balance, which we need desperately. So you guys need to be aware that things are a little up in the air right now, is I guess how I'll put it. And when I say that, I mean like the Division of Human Services, they're trying very hard, but I think that their direction from the governor is figure it out. Because when we talk to them as instructors, we're like, what is the expectation? Because that's the tough part. What do you want from us? We'll do anything, but what is it that you want? And they really can't answer it because they've been told, look, this is what you're supposed to do. This is your mission. This is your goal. And I have to say, I was so impressed in talking to some of the representatives from that department, because one of the things they're doing that I've never seen the government do before, and this was an order from our governor, is they're doing outreach and they're doing healing circles because they realize in the communities where housing has not been a priority, there is no trust. So they're starting with that, and this is the government doing that. And they're going to the leaders and having the leaders bring the people together and trying to build that trust so that through the trust, then they can start to educate and get people to know that wealth building really is built on housing and owning homes, not renting. So there's a lot of great things going on through the government, through NAR, through GSAR that's happening out there. It's really impressive. All right, so let's get past this stuff. And pretty soon we're gonna get into Mary's. Oh, this is pretty long, you guys, this GSAR, where it's just for your reference so that you can go through and see all of the protected classes, all of anything you want to know about discrimination, you can read through here so that you're just 100% on board with what the expectation is from GSAR's perspective. They talk about assistant animals, they talk about all of the things that we need to know. Marital or family status, which is one of the, it's interesting, you guys, one of the top groups of people who are discriminated against would be familial status. And it's interesting when you hear that because I didn't expect that to be the top people who had the struggle with discrimination. And I've got to tell you, a very interesting thing happened in one of my offices, and I'm sure you've all seen this, where we had a client who works for, I'm just gonna take a deep breath, the mayor of Albany. And we were working with her on her rental, and the agent who had her property came into my office and said, she doesn't want families. And I'm like, excuse me? And this woman said to the agent, I don't want families. And I mean, you work for the government. So, and we obviously went over the anti-discrimination with her. So she's fully aware that we are not allowed to discriminate. But she was very adamant with my agent, said, listen, we can't discriminate. We went over this. I don't want families. Kids are too loud. Kids are out of control. Oh my goodness. So does anybody know what is our role when that happens with one of our clients or a customer, when they speak to us like that and say, I don't want this? Or you've got an offer and the seller says to you, was this the whatever family, was this the Italian family, whatever it is that they are not interested in? Does anybody know what our role is? Okay, if you guys, I'm gonna have to start seeing you because I'm gonna call on you if you don't start volunteering. So I want you to be involved. Nobody's raising their hand, darn it. Oh man. All right.
No, I don't have any raised hands.
Oh, that's it, you guys. No, this is not how I roll. Like, I'm very much about us being involved.
We've got, in the chat, we've got tell your broker, don't represent them, discuss with your broker, and you tell them it's a violation and it's reportable.
Awesome. You guys are all 100% on the money, 100%. the expectation from HUD for us as licensed agents and from the DOS is that we walk away. So we, as a company, had to release this person as a client. That's our job. And so you have to understand that, knowing I had a very big concern that this person would be the first person to file a complaint against us. So in order to make sure that didn't happen, I called her, and of course she wanted to complain about my agent. And I just said to her, well, did she not do what did she not do for you? Tell me what the complaint was. And she really did not have a complaint. So our job in HUD's mind, in the DOS's mind, in the Division of Human Services, is to release the client and get out of the situation. If we can't get them to not discriminate against whomever it is that they're discriminating against. And sometimes you really can't. And you guys, one of the things I think that was extremely eye-opening for me was when Long Island Divided first came out, I was horrified. And when you watch it, Long Island it's grown up on discrimination. Like in the deeds in Long Island, they're very discriminatory, the old deeds. So it's very easy to say, it's not us. And I was right there. I'm like, I don't think we do that up here. And then as I was teaching and I was asking different agents, have you seen this? They were afraid to say it first, but after a while they would just be like, listen, I've seen it. Now we've seen it in our own house. So it's out there. You just have to know to walk away and first you try to work it out, obviously, but if there is no working it out, if the person or the client or the customer is adamant, then unfortunately, the expectation is that we get out of this situation. And if there is any kind of a complaint with HUD, in the HUD cases, if you look at them, if it's brought to a HUD level or to the Department of Human Services, they will, if they find the client, they will make sure that the agents get their commission, because they understand that we're doing the right thing in the process. All right, anybody have any questions? You guys are so quiet. No quiet. All right, let me get through this crap. Okay, so Mary Rouse, this is where your birthday gift comes in. So Mary has been asking me for a long time, and this is very true. She wanted a list of not acceptable words to use in advertising. And I've been looking, and this actually came off the NYSAR website. So this is on NYSAR, because here's what I think might happen is you guys might read some of these and be like, wait a minute, I don't think so. You got to take it up with Anthony Gatto. This is not mine. This is his. So this goes through telling you non-acceptable words to be utilized in any advertising in your description of properties. Play area is a no. Like sometimes you think those words are really not hurtful in any way. Disabled is a no. Oh, sorry, I'm going too fast. Traditional neighborhood, deaf, handicap parking, empty nesters, employee, employed. So another very important protected class in New York would be lawful source of income. And I think a lot of people find that one confusing because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but what it is, and you'll see this one violated quite a bit by landlords. So lawful source of income includes Section 8, it includes child support, it includes SSI, it includes DSI, it includes any way someone is getting money through the government, any lawful source of income. It includes that. So now you'll see a lot of landlords confused about Section 8, or you'll see your clients or customers confused about Section 8. They'll say to you, no, I want to rent my property, but I don't want Section 8. It's not a choice anymore. They absolutely have to consider Section 8 like they consider anything else. So if you are in the rental community, or if you're representing landlords, make sure that you are 100% up on what the current expectation is, what the current laws are, and know that they change quite a bit. So you want to make sure you stay relevant and stay up on what's changing.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second? I just wanted to let you know that you can ask your questions out loud now. We have turned off the unmute feature.
Okay, that raises my expectation. Now I expect a lot of chatter. Females only, gays, gender. perfect for should not describe the people. So I think we all know, right, that now we have to describe the property and not the people, right? So we can't, in the old days, we would say, perfect retiree home, perfect downsizer. You have to be really careful because these are things that if you've been in the industry a long time, we're used to using. School name or school district, got to be really careful. Secluded, can't say Section 8 because it's all lawful source of income now.
How about starter home? Can you present it as a great starter home?
I don't see starter home on this list, and I go by what Anthony says. Tranquil setting, students know, 2 people.
Hey, Mary, how about, it's like secluded backyard? Is that a no-no?
Let me go to the top of this list. I want to see if, let me make sure, not acceptable. Yeah, didn't he say secluded is not acceptable? Ugh. That's why these lists are, yeah,
And
secluded is.
private backyard, that's not acceptable
Nope,
either, if that's
private
the
on that
case.
list, yeah. Quality neighborhood, retirees, safe neighborhood. I mean, that's why. So you guys know the expectation now is that we be the resource, not the source. And there's been an awful lot of times that if you look through lawsuits where there's been a lot of lawsuits, we don't want to take on the liability of saying whether something is great school district. Well, you may have had your children may have had a great experience there, but it doesn't mean that someone else is. So we have to send them to the school, send them to a website, send them to law enforcement if they've got a question about crime or how safe is the neighborhood. You want to be the one to refer them to the source and not be that source.
So it used to be that if a homeowner was living in the property, there was more leeway as to selecting tenants. Does that still exist or is that no longer?
So you're talking about the Mrs. Murphy exemption? So the Mrs. Murphy exemption, what she's talking about is a homeowner of I believe it's a 2-family and lower. If you're living there, you can, and you do not hire a real estate agent. So remember that if you hire a real estate agent, we are bound by the anti-discrimination laws. So if a person lives in a property and they're going to rent, they can say no children. They cannot advertise that though, but they can, it's within their rights to be a little more selective about who lives in the home.
Mary, you may want to address, there's a lot of chatter in the chat room about 55+ communities, and let them know that those are specific, designated, and they're legal. You might want to chat about that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. So yes, they are legal. They go through the Attorney General, so they are allowed to, in their deeds, a lot of them have the 55+. There has to be, we have a 55 and over community here where we sell real estate, where there was they was sold to somebody under 55, they were like 54, and it went sideways and the woman had to sell, which is right. So with 55 and over, one person on the deeds got to be 55 or over. So that is the requirement with that. And it is allowed, definitely allowed. And the Attorney General signs off on that. So that's how the decision is made.
Lenora, that's how I got my place in Florida. Nancy's 5 years older than me, and I wasn't 55 yet.
Oh my God, no making fun of age. Hold on a minute.
What about like size limits for houses? Like I had a 2-bedroom house where the owner put 3 bedrooms in the basement because it was near the university and his son was renting out to friends, and then he wanted to rent it out. And there was a family with 8 kids who wanted to rent it. And it was a very small house. Are you able to say there's too many people for the square footage?
There are HUD guidelines, which the HUD guidelines go by BOCA, which is the Building Owners and Code Administration guidelines. But I would check with the local building code enforcement officer, because generally they have guidelines of their own, and they're where you want to start. And see what they say. And then, so the most stringent law applies. So if you check with the local and they've got some kind of law, then go with them. If there's a more stringent state law, then go with that. But I would not make a decision. I would get someone in a position of authority to make that decision for you. I would call HUD and say, what do I do with this? HUD follows a guideline, but I don't, again, this is not, I don't want you guys to go to the bank on this because this is what I was taught. But if you go to a HUD hearing and you say, Mary Peyton told me this, they're going to be like, I don't know who she is. And I really don't care. What are you doing? Right. So you have to know. But what I was taught was that the HUD goes by the book of guidelines, and for bedrooms, there has to be at least 50 square feet for one person and 100 square feet for two people. And HUD considers a person to be anyone over the age of 1. So a baby would not qualify until they became over the age of 1. But you really want to follow your local guidelines, because I think your building inspector will have quite a bit to say about that, and your fire marshal. You know what I mean? You've got all those laws to take into consideration.
Mary, I've got a couple questions in the chat to bring up on this topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Danielle.
Okay. If a home is wheelchair accessible, how can you say that in a description?
If a home is wheelchair accessible, so you have, let me just double check Anthony's words, because I want to make sure I don't tell you guys the wrong thing. Handicap parking, not for handicapped.
You can say ADA compliant.
Yes, thank you. You're right. ADA compliant. Yep. That's
Thanks,
right.
Mom.
Yep.
The next question in the chat is, how does a land law learn of the changes in the anti-discrimination laws?
So you did really, you can look on the New York State site. You can look on the, let me show you my little book here. The New York State executive law. So if you can print stuff off of any of the human rights law, there is any of the state sites. I would not go on Google, because the Lord knows you can't really trust, what you get off there. But if you go to any of the government sites, they will update you. And if you go to the governor's site, any of the new laws that the governor's passing, there'll be a summary of them so that you can keep up with what is happening in the government. As long as you've got a starting point, so you know where the laws are, and then keep up with as the governor passes new laws. And right now, ever since Long Island Divided, the governor's been passing quite a few laws regarding all of this.
Okay. And then the last question I see for right now is, question is, you cannot say it's in walking distance of stores. And what do you mean about pets? No.
Well, so you guys, here's one of the things is that everything is changing rapidly. So one of the reasons when you asked about the handicap ramp is that it used to be, and when I say used to be, I want to say a year ago, that you couldn't, if you were an agent or if you were a landlord, there were cases where, or if you were a landlord's agent, so say that you were the property maintenance people for a landlord, and you went in and saw that the tenant was in a wheelchair, and you said to the tenant, we could lower the cabinets for you, and you got sued, you would lose because you brought that up to the tenant. You were not allowed to do that. Now it's a whole different world. So that's what I mean too, by staying very on top of what's happening, because you might think you can't say it, and now you're required to say it. It is like, that's, I'm honestly, like, it gets really, it gets very convoluted in my mind, because to stay up with these laws and to make sure you're on the right side of them is no easy task, because they're changing quite a bit. I'm sorry, what was the question, Danielle? Read it again, because I got myself all off track by answering that.
I'm muted, sorry. The question was, I have a question also. You cannot say it's in walking distance of stores, and what do you mean about pets, was the question.
Oh, so pets, I was referring to the whole service animal issue, which again is a whole changing issue, because of course people took advantage of that particular aspect of bringing pets into the home, and that just turned into a mess, which people will. And you can, with walking distance, did Anthony have that on here as part of the list? Because I don't remember that being an issue in any way, shape, or form. So hold on a sec. Winter rental rates. I don't see walking distance because I don't think walking distance to town is an issue. And if you, in our MLS, we have a walkability score on there. So I don't think it's more if you start bringing in religious, walking distance to religious, if someone is going to, a certain way that somebody celebrates their religion, then it starts becoming questionable. Or if someone comes to you, a buyer, and says, I want to be a mile from temple, I want to be a mile from synagogue, I want to be a mile from the Catholic Church, that's not something that we can, as agents, honor. We've got to say to them, well, let's figure out what you want. Let's look around here. We've just got to find a different way to go at it, because that's a violation of fair housing.
So I see that on there, it says you can't put se habla español. So if I'm a Spanish speaker and I want to reach out to Spanish speaking clients, I can't do that anymore?
That's a question for Anthony Gatto, because that is a new one on me. I don't know
I mean,
why
you would think that it's a benefit and that it's not
yeah,
discriminating.
right. I don't know why you could not say se habla español. I think that you can. I think that he was looking for, I think he put no after the ones you couldn't say. Hold on, let me go. Acceptable. Yes, se habla español is under the
Oh,
acceptable.
okay. All
Yes,
right, thank
I
you.
thought so. Yeah, just so you guys know what's what here. Yeah, that's definitely under the acceptable. So you guys are going to get all of this. So you've got this list in front of you. So you know you've got this list of words to avoid or the acceptable words to put in. So hopefully that will help you in your practice. All right, so the next thing we're going to discuss, so I don't know how many of you guys have younger children, but I have a 15-year-old know-it-all freshman in high school. And oh my God, like this is the topic of our life, because I can't do anything right. Let's just be honest. That's the first problem that we have. So we go through a lot of this LGBTQ, different ways that this comes into play, and it especially comes into play with her friends, because I'm socially adept at this. So I will say, what about her? And she'll be like, you're a jerk. It's a him. Like, I don't know how you tell that. So one of the things that we took a look at here is how the pronouns work, because this is really important. And one of the things I never realized is in the English language, a lot of languages have pronouns that are neutral where we don't. So that's why society is going towards doing gender neutral pronouns, and people are using the they, the them, the their. So we've got the pronouns, we've got the feminine pronouns, we've got the masculine, we've got the gender neutral, the they, the them, the their. We've got other gender neutral pronouns that I've not seen so much in the area that I live in, which the Z, the zir, the zem, the zirs, the zes, and the other gender, the Z, the here, the heres. So the best way I can describe it is to say that when people put pronouns, let me say this, the best thing to do is just like we do with cultural competency, is when you're introducing yourself, do you have pronouns that you use and what are they? So that you can make it a very comfortable part of the conversation and make sure that you're making everybody comfortable and you're addressing the topic up front. And if they go by they, it doesn't really, if you use him, her, they, it's okay to interchangeably use them. And if somebody has their pronouns written after their name, the first one that they have, like I think, Danielle, you have your pronouns written after your name. The first one they use is the preferred pronoun that they'd like to be addressed as. So that's one way that you can tell in a situation like this on a Zoom. And then I have a gender-specific pronouns and how to use them, so that give you a little chart so that you can utilize how to best approach this topic with anyone. if you have difficulty using someone's pronoun, and it's hard, you guys, it's hard. I have a hard time with it. And I've been corrected, my God, daily by my child. But it's just a matter of apologizing and trying to do better. You know, my pronouns are she and her. And maybe listening to how other people refer to them. You guys know how we do it. If we can't remember somebody's name, we're like, oh my gosh, please, somebody call them by their name so that I can remember it. Same thing with pronouns, so that hopefully I can remember what it is. And then you'll see the new name tags will have pronouns at the bottom, which is good, so that you'll know, again, in this situation, Lauren her first preference is to be a she, to be referred to as she. But her is acceptable as well. And if she had they on there, also they would be acceptable for Lauren, so that you would know. This, you guys, I'm going to make sure you have. This is one of my favorite things. Like, I'm putting it all out there for you guys because this is my, oh my gosh, these are my go-tos. So this is something that if I were you guys, I would live and die by, and maybe in January go through and utilize this. So this would be for yourself an annual compliance review for salespeople. So you want to remember that your relationship with the Department of State and with your board is your relationship, and especially when it comes to the DOS. So if a complaint comes through, yes, your broker is going to get copied on it, but if a client complains about you and your broker is not involved, it's going to be you the DOS wants to talk to. So if you go through here and just refresh your memory about listing agreements, about what you need to do on your business cards, then you'll make sure as you're looking through your stuff that you are not in violation of anything. Your license renewals, your independent contractor status, making sure that you're in compliance with the agency law, which this, you guys, is really tough, I think, for a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of brokers who've been in the business for a long time who've referred to agency as a slippery slope, because I think that it's changed, it's morphed. The DOS's expectations with agency have changed and morphed. And for some people, it is, or some brokers, it's a topic that for them, it might be hard to put their arms around. So don't be afraid to make some calls if you are confused. Don't be afraid to find out from your broker if they know. Call Anthony Gatto. Anthony's very black and white. He will hardcore tell you which way to go. Call the DOS and ask them. Just be with the DOS now. The best way to do is email them, and they will put it in writing for you. Just make sure that you're very clear on your role and the role of your role with your client, and make sure that you've got your agency forms filled out properly and that you're doing them, and you guys know this, at the correct time, at the first substantive contact. Because one of the things that has always intrigued me is how the DOS looks at things. And for them, and I've learned a lot by watching the cases that the DOS brings against agents and really following them and thinking, well, I think in this situation, this agent did the right thing, only to find out they hadn't. So I'll give you guys one case that really surprised me, which was there was an agent in Rochester and a DOS tester had called him on a Monday and said, I'm looking for property in Rochester. I'm going to be out there on a Wednesday to look at the property. And on Wednesday, when the tester arrived in Rochester, the agent presented the tester with agency post-dated to Monday. And the DOS fined him and said, in this day and age, you should have at least, sent it via email. You should have done something to disclose agency. It's not your problem to get it back, but you have to at least send it and explain it. And know too that a lot of us have put in the bottom of our email, we've put a link to our agency, and the DOS doesn't consider that to be sufficient unless we point it out, unless we say, oh, by the way, at the bottom, there is an agency disclosure that I need you to look over and read and explain it a little bit so the general public can understand it, because it's very, very confusing to the general public, as I'm sure you guys are aware. Anybody have any questions on that? You guys are quiet. Are you asleep or just?
Mary, I have a question. I want to backtrack a little.
Sure.
In the case that you had mentioned earlier about familiar status and that case where an agent or broker would have to actually walk away if we
Mhm.
just could not educate and let them know that they're
Mhm.
breaking the law.
Mhm.
Don't we also have an additional obligation to report them to DOH?
Mhm. Yeah, we did. We did, because we can't really, yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point, David, and yes, because we're aware of it. And we're licensed. We have to do what we have to do. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for asking that question, because it's really important. Yeah, we can't let it continue. Yep. Great observation. Anybody else have any questions? Oh my gosh. All right. Antitrust. So we're still in the agent compliance. So antitrust review, which is really something great to take a look at, you guys, because remember that right now NAR is in court. And a lot of it, well, it's going to start in the fall, but a lot of it has to do with antitrust, potential antitrust violations. So you want to make sure, since it's a really hot topic, that you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. Because again, that's becoming one of the big issues out there that we just want to make sure that we're on top of. Not that we're not on top of all of our issues, but there's a lot to know. Reviewing the code of ethics. This one, for me, you guys, is huge. And I think it's probably because of the number of agents that I manage. I will have an agent from another company call me and say, your agent violated clear cooperation. I'll be like, okay, what happened? And then they'll start talking about variable rate commission. And I'll be like, okay, well, wait a minute, because I want to make sure I'm understanding the circumstance. I'm like, how is this clear cooperation? And then they'll be like, well, I don't know. It's something in ethics, so they know that ethics have been violated in their mind. So you want to make sure that you're clear on ethics, just so there had not been a violation because the agent had not done variable rate commission, but you want to make sure that you are aware of how to handle situations. One of the biggest ones I hear all of the time is the issue of, oh my God, the other agents are telling me that I have to disclose to them if I've got other offers, and they're mad at me because I have not disclosed. And I'm like, okay, ho, read your ethics. No, you do not. It's up to your seller how this is going to go. And it's not that. One of the things too I want to tell you guys, it's not your job to train everybody, because I've had agents get into battles with other. I'm like, no, just this is what my seller would like, and walk away. Because your seller owns the property. They get to call all the shots on what is communicated. So we cannot make those decisions, no matter how mad somebody gets at us. We've got to be obedient to our client. Super, super important. See, remind you to clarify any modifications in compensation which you are offering, which would be variable rate commission. So say that you have a house and a lot next door listed, and you tell the seller that if I sell both, I will reduce your commission to XYZ. Then that would be variable rate commission. So you do have to disclose that if you're selling both to a co-broke.
Isn't the variable rate commission the one that is exempt in New York? I thought that's the one on the code of ethics in New York that we don't follow.
Hold on a minute. I got it right here.
That is correct.
But that's not the disclosure of variable rate commission. If you are doing, that's not in New York. That's not exempt. You have to disclose. Hold on.
That's the one article that's struck down in New York State because of anti.
You are 100% right. You are 100% right. Hold on. I'm looking for it as we speak. It's up in front of me. All right, hold on. In New York. Okay. While I'm looking for this, everybody understand the new audio recording device disclosure form? Everybody know what that is? Yeah, I'll be looking like, what are you talking about now?
Yeah, it's confusing.
It is, well, and you guys are not wrong about that. I think it's confusing because it's got so much verbiage to it. And it's unfortunate because it really doesn't need to be this involved, I don't think. So just make sure, you guys, that your sellers are disclosing if they have any kind of audio recording device inside the home that is recording. It doesn't count for outside, counts for inside. And
We've had some pretty extensive conversations here in Syracuse on this, and our local council is not advising that we use the NISAR form.
Okay.
He thinks it goes way too far, and the approach that we've been taking here is that we state what the law is.
Okay.
Period. And we're changing both listing and purchase contracts to reflect that, where the consumer is made aware of what the law is, and we quote the law, we quote the number of the law, and we quote the law. But, the idea that we will disclose that they have it is taking a level of responsibility that may be problematic for our industry.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Certainly, we need to advise our clients of what the law is and not go along with the breaking of the law. But we've taken a different approach here, than what NISAR has recommended.
I'm not going to argue with an attorney ever in my life. So listen, then that it makes sense to me too.
Don, Mary, may I just chime in? Martin Carpenter. Don, you're absolutely right as far as the approach. Just as a quick reminder, in this past week, there has been a message from the GSAR on the weekly message talking about it, giving disclosure specifically what is going to be changing in the exclusive right to represent that we provide as a courtesy to brokers, what is being changed into the exclusive representation agreement for a buyer client, and good practices and policies. And you're exactly right, Don, stating the law, not crossing the line, and getting into that we are going to investigate there's cameras or not. That's not our role. That's not our job. We can't violate somebody's eavesdropping. If there's somebody's eavesdropping, we can't say it's all okay because they waived their rights. There's no such thing. And I know, Don, you and I have worked closely on this with the forms committee to make this happen. So it is complicated, Dave. You're absolutely right. But my philosophy is don't go into the areas that we're not correct in. So
yeah.
I want to drive the point. I think it's worth, because this is so topical and it can be confusing, but I think there's a simple way to clarify it, to make us understand it simply. So if David Manzano Sr. brought this up, so I'm going to use him as an example. If David Manzano Sr. and I are on the phone together and I decide that I want to record it, I'm just using it as an example, because he's a party to the recording, to the conversation. He called me or I called him. I can record him and not tell him, and I can play that recording for anybody else that I want to. However, if David Manzano Sr.'s house is on the market and he's not there, and my realtor shows me that house and he's recording me, that's illegal because we're not a party to each other. I think that's a simple way of making people understand this. And then what Martin and Don just brought up to further, our attorney, unlike Anthony Gatto, God bless him, is recommending that we don't try to do a waiver, because that's the equivalent of saying, oh, one of the protected classes, waiving one of those minority classes. You can't waive something that's illegal. So,
correct.
So I think that's a simple way to understand it. And then as far as the video recording is concerned, that they can do all they want. It's perfectly legal. So if I were bringing David Manzano Sr., but I thought since I'm using you, so if I were going to show him a house on the way in my car or on the way in, I'd say, you know what? Let's not chat about anything. Comment about anything. Let's just go through and take a look and blah 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 blah, and don't say or do anything that and you may be videotaped, but don't even talk about the audio. Does that make it a little bit more clear for people?
100%. I love that. Yeah. Because that's exactly the truth of the matter. Exactly the truth. And what we're required to do is disclose, and it can be verbal. So it's not mandatory that it be in writing. So you guys are 100% on the money. That as long as you're saying it, you're fine. You're 100% fine. So that's, yeah, I like it. Yep. Excellent job. And just remember too, that there is a buyer tenant as well, or a tenant lessee. But I'm sure you guys are disclosing verbally, which is very, very good. I threw the agency form in here just to make sure that what I wanted to make sure of with this, you guys, is I don't know how many of you have actually had a DOS tester or had a DOS complaint. So Mark is laughing. Mark, have you had one? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Being a broker of a large company, you can imagine perhaps that would be the case.
Ah, you have. And how did it go with the DOS without telling details? And
Well, I will say this, I think everybody on here knows this, that let's say a DOS complaint comes in about something completely unrelated to agency. The first thing they look at, the very first thing they look at is the agency disclosure form and that sort of thing. So you could be completely cleared of what the original complaint was
100%.
about, but they're going to look at that and be found that if there's a violation, that's where they're going to go. So be really, 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 make sure that you got your T's crossed and I's dotted and that to that.
That's a huge point, because the complaints, you guys, can be silly too. They can be obviously unfounded, and the DOS has to come out and just look into things. And what they're going to do is they're going to want to see the agency forms. So if all of their forms are dated the day they wrote an offer, they're not fools. They know that that's not really how it's going to go 100% of the time. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up on your agency, that you're making sure that they have no problem with if you've got multiple agency forms because you are switching positions, like say that you're a seller's agent and then you become a dual agent with designated sales agents. Okay, so now you've got a second agency form. Just keep them both on file. They love to see that, because then they know you fully understand agency, that you started out as the seller's agent, your position changed, you disclosed to everybody, and everybody's on board with this new arrangement. And
Mary, there's one more thing, since you did ask me how to, there's one thing that my person was found in violation of, that was a learning lesson for me years ago, that a lot of people don't realize. And I bet you, I would think that better than 50% of the people on this Zoom would not know what I'm about to say. So I'd rather err on the
please
of informing. So let's say that I have two agents. Let's say I have an agent, has a house listed, and they're working with a buyer, and they're showing a house, and they go on vacation, and they got the agency disclosure form all signed and filled out, and they go on vacation for several days, and they ask another agent in their office with my same company to cover for them. That other agent has to get a separate agency disclosure form signed. The one from the original agent doesn't count because it's a different agent. This was years ago, and I didn't realize that. We were called in on a complaint unrelated. We were found innocent of the complaint unrelated. But that they look at the agency disclosure and they said, well, agent number 2, you didn't have an agency disclosure form signed. Well, they said, yeah, we have it right here. It's on file. The agent that, the original agent that was working with them that went on vacation had it done. And they said, no, you're a separate agent. You have to have a separate forms, and it cost us a lot of money. So I learned that lesson well, and I wonder how many people know that. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Great point, Mark. Great point. Because people don't think of all of the circumstances.
Mark, what's the rationale behind that? I mean, if the buyer is knowledgeable about the law, it was explained the first time, why are they insisting that it be done again with another
Because
agent?
George, since you're with my company, if you covered for, Jane in your office and Jane got it signed, that buyer was working with Jane. Jane's a different person than you are, George. I can't get in their head, but that was their rationale. And both myself and our agent both got fined a good amount of money. I can't speak for their rationale, but that's what I was stunned. I was surprised.
So,
Mark, can I ask a question? Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so if I help another agent and show a house to her clients, so I need to have those clients sign that agency disclosure form. Is that clear? I have not done that. Okay, so I'm gonna do it from now on.
Can I ask something real quick? Can I ask something real quick, if you don't mind? So the only thing I would say to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when they sign with that agent, they're signing with the broker. So my thought is, why would you need another one signed if the same broker is handling and agencies with the broker?
David Jr., I agree with you 100%. And that was my rebuttal, and I lost.
Wow.
And I learned that lesson.
Part of the rationale is that, and I agree with both Dave Jr. and Mark, that it doesn't make sense because you do sign with the broker.
Yep.
But part of the rationale, as explained to me, is that, in fact, other licensees in the firm can be working on other sides of transactions and have clients who may be on opposite sides at different times. And so that individual agent who is covering for another agent needs to make clear in that situation what their standing is. I personally think it's a stretch because you do sign with the broker, but that was the explanation that I was given.
And it is a stretch, but Shauna Thielen put into the chat, Shauna, very good point. She wrote into the chat, it's a separate and another substantive appointment.
It is.
So and that nicely put, Shauna.
It is, yes.
Not only that, but this disclosure is specific to the agent, the licensee. It doesn't say broker. And that's the way the state's looking at it.
I have a question.
Is there a way that we could put something in there that if you're just taking care of it while somebody's on vacation, that it's just from this period to this period, in case you do have maybe you're helping them with their listing while they're gone, they come back and now suddenly you have a buyer for the property, but you've now signed something with the seller saying that you're representing them. Is there something that you can just put from this period to this period that you would be representing them? How would that work?
Well, you're having a new substantive contact with somebody you don't know yet. When you're on vacation, Cheryl, and then somebody calls you because of the sign and they come in, you've never met them, you need to have that discussion, and you're a different agent with a different buyer. So
wait,
you want to cover yourself.
Can I ask a quick question just to clarify for myself? So let's say, like we're all working together. They had a doctor's appointment real quick and they asked me, Stephanie, can you just show this person the house? And I literally just showed them the house. I don't interact. I don't even know if they accepted the offer or, they continued with the broker. Do I still have to have that form present?
You should.
Mhm.
If in doubt, Stephanie, remember these words,
100%.
if in doubt, disclose, and
Fill
if
it
in
out.
doubt, cover
Fill it out.
all angles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's
Thank you.
very good. The question earlier, Cheryl, I think had the question. The DOS encourages us to memorialize and put in writing explanations on the agency disclosure form, such as I'm doing it from this date to this date, or it's for this property only. That is highly encouraged by DOS that we do that on the agency disclosure forms when appropriate.
Thank
Can I
you.
break in with some chat questions?
Okay, absolutely.
Does that also mean an additional fair housing is signed too?
Yep, absolutely, because they're both required at first substantive contact.
Okay, and the next one, actually, I had two questions about that. So you just answered that. And then to all disclosures, again, to cover yourself and the broker, and different agents will speak differently to this. Those aren't questions, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Apply to open houses, also agency disclosure.
I would recommend that you have them there. I would recommend that you have your agency form, because remember, it's first substantive contact. So you don't know what's going to happen in an open house, the conversation you're going to get into with somebody where you may have to start disclosing. And I know some of you are not fans of Anthony, but I like his explanation of this because it's simple and easy. So for him, first substantive contact is anything off the listing form. So if a client or a customer asks you, are there other homes like this? You got to have everything signed. Will the seller, reduce the price? Will the seller, what will they take? So you really need to have those forms there, and especially the ones if you're, you have to disclose which side of the fence you're on, because that's part of the problem. Is in what's going on too, just to explain a little bit more, you guys, is New York is a consumer protection state, and they feel very, very strongly, and it's true. Think about the people that you've worked with who don't have any clue, as much as you explain to them how real estate works. They act surprised when something comes up, and you've explained it very well. So this is like it's another language to a lot of people. So New York wants to make sure that they understand how they're being represented and which side you're on. So if you're representing the seller, they know, because people will walk into an open house and spill their life story, and they don't want that to happen unless you say, listen, I'm representing the seller. So you know what I mean? You guys know that this goes on. So that's where it's got to be explained to people, so they know not to say things to you thinking, well, that's my agent. I walked in, that person was there. It's where it gets tricky.
Okay, last question in the chat that I see on this topic is, so since the buyer is not technically the agent, who is covering a showing for another agent? Are they representing the buyer or seller? Since we represent the seller unless the buyer is under contract.
So I think it depends. If they're offering sub-agency, and if it's your office's listing, then there's a lot of depends in that sentence. If it's your broker's listing, then you are representing your broker. The best thing to do, you guys, just to keep the DOS off your back, is just fill the forms out. Just fill them out, because a lot of times too, if you'll go to DOS meetings, I think it's very difficult they're not boots on the ground. So they're not out there with clients. And I don't think that they fully understand all of the circumstances that we get into. And so it's tough for them to answer the questions. So if you're just having everybody sign as you are disclosing, and not in an open house, only if you're getting into those conversations with people, no one's going to have a problem with you. As far as a DOS, if they have to come in and look at your files, they're going to be fine as long as they know you're paying attention. That's what they're looking for. And I've seen it. I'm going to give you guys my tip of the century, because this was just, when I first started my career in real estate, this was a horrifying job, because it was a lot of years ago. I was a DOS liaison for a very large company. Oh, it was rough, because you knew you were not getting the right answers. There used to be a customer service phone bank, and you call, and they all had employee ID numbers. So when they'd answer the phone, they'd go employee ID, and I'd be like, what? And you'd call it back, you get a different employee, and you couldn't understand their number either, and they'd give you different answers, and it was terrible. So when I took over office managing, this is what I did. I'm like, I will not ever. So what we do here is we have every agent in my office has a tab, and they're required once a week to bring their agency forms in, and they're all filed under their names. So here's what happened. We had a complaint with the DOS, and my agent, God bless her, was like, I don't need you. Fine, whatever. And then the agency form issue came up, and she said, I need you. And this was years ago at a different brokerage. When I put this book down in front of the investigator, he didn't know what to do with himself, because there's no way he can say we didn't take this seriously by looking through this book, because there were some where we wrote on it, refused to sign. Because that's, and I told them, listen, you've got to have all of the instances when it happens of what has happened in your practice. If they refuse to sign, there's got to be some where you haven't sold your property. You can't have every one of your agencies, especially based on your volume. You can't have every one of your agencies be someone you sold property to. They're not fools. Like, I'm sure they've got some kind of statistical numbers, knowing that you do show properties that you don't sell to those buyers. So just be careful with this and make sure that you're keeping good records.
Perfect. Couple more questions popped up. Can we have both agents' names at the first substantive meeting?
I'm a little unclear on that question. First, both agents' names. Oh, meaning the agent who you're helping? No, because I will. Well, okay.
Yes, that's what I'm.
It says yes.
The answer is yes.
That's what. Yes.
Oh, good.
I have one more question in the chat, and then Natalie has her hand up.
Okay.
If you're hosting an open house and the potential buyer is working with an agent already, are we still required to fill out agency and fair housing forms?
Okay, so it depends on the conversation. So really, if they're working with another agent, they should not be talking to you about price in the neighborhood. And you know what I mean? They shouldn't be talking to you. They're not going to ask are there other houses like this in the neighborhood. They're going to go to their own agent. So you should not be in those conversations. But if they start getting into them, that's when you're going to violate your agency relationship with the other agent. So that's when you just say, you know, why don't you go to your agent? Because that is our job too, to be like, this is, you know, I am not your agent. I need you to contact your agent and they'll be happy to answer those questions for you.
Natalie, then Chris.
So it's not really a question. It's more of just kind of a little bit of input. Just like Mary was saying is, you know, anytime I've ever gone, I am a stickler about disclosures. Oh, I mean, constantly. And have them in your car. Have blank copies in your car. Same thing with fair housing disclosure, fair housing notice. Unless things have changed, you're supposed to have that on you at all times during showings. And you know, the easiest way is, you know, you just explain to them, this is, you know, this is coming from New York State. New York State is, you know, is a consumer, you know, forward state. They're looking to protect you. And I abide by the rules, and I'm looking in your best interest and in mine, you know, and just I feel like it's just a really, in 10 years of real estate, I think one time I've had somebody not want to sign. And then you know, from what I've learned in many classes is you turn the back of the page over, you write down, you know, everything that kind of took place. They refuse to sign, try to get them to sign that they refuse to sign. You know, and go from there. It's ultimately in their best interest. And I feel that if you know, it kind of explain that, and, you know, if anything, I feel that it makes them put more trust in you, that you're doing the right thing, versus how many times I've gone and I've met somebody before, I've heard that, oh, I've never seen this before. Well, haven't you been seeing houses? Yeah, but well, now that's a perfect opportunity to show I do things the right way. So that's just my input on that.
100%, Natalie, 100%. And you guys, I always approach it like this is a consumer protection form from New York State, because that takes off the onus of us putting something in front of them and they think that we're trying to get them to sign something that's going to make them our client for life. Do you know what I mean? That's where their heads are going. Oh my God, I'm signing away my life. So it like Natalie said, it takes away that fear and that worry. And it makes them understand that this is just New York State, making sure you understand how it works in real estate, where I stand in representing you. And I just want to make sure, you guys, because in all of my travels, I find that people agents, professionals do not understand what a broker's agent is. So, and I would be, the one thing that I fear the most is an agent or myself even being in front of a client and having them ask us something off of this form and us giving them something off of a form that we should know because this is our professional occupation, and us giving them the blank stare of what a broker's agent is. So make sure that you can answer those questions, because we're all going to get those clients who are very detail oriented and are going to want to know. And if you don't know, you're not going to look like you know what you're doing. And you want to talk about losing confidence. That'll do it. That'll do it. So thank you, Natalie, very much.
Perfect. So Chris, go ahead and then just giving a time update. It is 11:10. So
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Mary, and everybody
morning.
else. I just wanted to mention that the anti-discrimination disclosure form that we have to do with first substantive contact is also required at every open house to be posted at every open house. And I thought it would be helpful to reference that.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, yep. And you need to also have the form has to be posted as well about the anti-discrimination.
Real quick, that's supposed to be technically at all of your listings as well, correct?
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. Yep. And that's something too, you guys know, make sure your sellers don't throw it out, because they're like, what is this? We don't need this here. So this is not something you have to use, and your board may have something similar. But this is just something I wanted to show you guys that are options. Like sometimes a lot of the complaints that go through the DOS are people didn't understand dual agency, or they didn't understand advanced informed consent. They didn't understand any of it. So these are just further protections if you feel like you need it. If you have someone that you're working with you feel like really doesn't understand, these forms are available for you to have them go over with them and have them sign, just so you can feel more comfortable that they are a little more, they are acknowledging that they understand what's going on. We just talked about this, about the housing discrimination form. I put this in here, you guys, and I'm sure your board has one. This is our board's version, so I'm sorry that it's a different version from what you have, because I wanted to make you guys aware that with no one knows what's going to happen with the NAR lawsuits that are currently pending. So there's a lot of speculation. This could be the outcome, that could be the outcome, but the consensus right now appears to be, and this could change, that it may come down to, hopefully you guys are current on the lawsuits and know that they have a lot to do with antitrust. And we've got sellers saying that they should not be paying a high commission, that they should not be offering the co-broke and compensating the buyer's agent. So a lot of the feeling in the industry among the industry thinkers is that we'll go to having straight up buyer agent. We'll have buyer agent and we'll have seller agent is a possibility of how this will all shake out once the lawsuits are decided, which they've not started yet. They've been delayed and been delayed and been delayed. So just one thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that you are familiar with the form and that you know how to utilize it and you know how to explain it. Again, really, really important. And then that's our boards, and then NYSAR has their own, and I'm sure your board has their own as well. This is something else, you guys, that I love this. So this is a checklist. So this goes through if you are needing to contact someone about finding out information, if you find out that you have a property that's in a Superfund site, or if you're looking for flood maps or anything, the Army Corps of Engineers, it tells you where to go, state lands, you can go to state parks. If you're looking for recreation, historic preservation, zoning maps, power corridors, just so you Power Authority, overlay zones, Adirondack Park Agency, how to get in touch with everybody. So this is just something for you to utilize to help you figure out where to go. If you need to figure out classified streams, the federal wildlife, all of the different New York State Historical Society. Oops, and this one printed sideways, and I apologize, I didn't realize that till afterward. And then I've got the Code of Ethics in here for you guys, because you know, this puppy's really important. So we've got that for you to review as well. All right, so I'm gonna stop my share. All right, there you go. So was that helpful?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, yes, and you, to George, you are going to get a copy of all of this, because what I wanted to make sure of, I wanted to show it all to you and then provide it to you so that you could utilize this in your business if you chose, you had it at your fingertips, and it was handy for you, because that's super important.
Mary, we will use these forms, there's no doubt. We'll go through them and we'll make sure that the members will get a copy of the presentation that applies to our board also. Some of your information may not apply to
Right.
what we do here, but